So now we've got our light set up. Sorry, now we've got our camera set up. We can drill into making lights and setting up the renderer. So you can see I've tweaked the scene a bit. Now one thing to note is this. If you can see, if I middle mouse drag, it moves the camera, which is fine, except that while you're manipulating the scene later on, you can accidentally do this, and then everything is misaligned, especially if you're doing multiple layers in Photoshop. So it's a good idea to lock the camera position. You can do it like this. I'm going to select the camera from the layer and the camera target, and then I'm going to go over to here, link info, that's it. And I'm going to set up this. So I'm going to stop all movement, rotations and scales, and so I'm going to lock all that up. So now when I middle mouse drag, nothing happens, and that means I can't accidentally dislodge my scene while I'm messing around doing other things. And now everything's safe, we can get on to placing some lights. So I'm very happy to drop the lights into this layer, that keeps everything together. So I can go over here, and with this layer active, you can see that's green. I can go over to Systems, which is this button, in the Create panel, and I can choose Daylight. But before I do that, I'm just going to switch to the top view and to Wireframe. So I click the Daylight tab, and it's going to kick up this dialog. You're creating a daylight system. It is recommended use MR photographic exposure control. Yes, I would like to change that now. And then I only click somewhere, and I'm going to drag this compass into a reasonable size. It's just a manipulator, so it doesn't actually matter how big it is. It just matters that I can find it again. And then I'm going to let go, and then I'm going to drag back, and this is just going to control the distance of the manipulator for the sun from the compass. So I'm just going to drag back until it's at a useful distance, and then I click down. So it's important to note that that's not the actual position of the light source. The light source is at infinity because it's a sunlight. So it doesn't matter how long that line is. It's just a helper to help you position the sun direction. Cool. And you can see that because this layer is active, those 3 systems are now being added to my layer. So now I can go into the modifier tab up here, and I can make some adjustments. So we have a bunch of settings here, and we're going to mess with this stuff first. So I want to change this to MR Sun, and then I'm going to change this to MR Sky. And it gives me this dialog: you are creating MR Sky, and we want to add an MR Physical Sky Environment Map. Yes, we do, because that is cool. And then I can switch back to my camera point of view, like this. And I can simply click on Render, because we've set up. In here we've got our render dialog set up, and it's set to iRay. So let's see what happens straight out of the box. So what will happen initially is you can see this bar is zooming up a bit. So it's doing a bunch of calculations, and it's caching things. So initially the whole frame would be blank, and then when it's cached everything and it's moved stuff around, then it'll actually start rendering. And you may not see much change here as it's going through, because this is a progressive renderer. So what will happen is it will dump a big grainy frame into view straight away, and then it will go and refine it progressively as you let it run on. So you can see the iteration count going up, and as it's doing so, the grain is slowly being removed. But we're just at low res at the moment, so you're not seeing much difference. So I can just cancel this and wait for everything to catch up. There we go. And now we have a low resolution version of our frame, which is great. So you can now try and get some direction into your sunlight. So if I go to top view, we can mess with this. So to change the direction of your sunlight, you can simply click on that compass and you can rotate it like this. So we can get our sunlight coming from a different direction. And I can press C to go back into camera view, and then I can click on the render production and it will kick off again, cache the scene, and eventually something will pop into you, and there you go. And you may notice, if you're super observant, that the shadow direction has changed. So let's cancel that again. I've got a reasonably fast computer, so the render times are pretty quick on this machine. So your machine may be a bit slower, and you may have a blank screen for longer. However, if things continue to be blank, then there's a few things you can do to check. So up here we have the rendered frame window. So if the frame is completely dark, it means that it could mean a couple of things. So you can go up here, and when you click on this, you should see a silhouette of your scene. If you're not seeing a silhouette of your scene, it means something's gone wrong, and more than likely it means that the materials that you're using aren't supported by Iray, and you're going to have to switch materials around. But the standard shader is supported, which is what I'm using for this demo, and we'll drill into other material types later. So I can click on that again to turn the alpha off. The other thing that can happen is if we go into rendering, we can go into environment up here. Oh, exposure control, that's what we want. Okay, so the exposure control works a bit exactly like a camera, in fact. So we can have a photographic exposure setting like this, and this will control frame rate, aperture, which all basically boils down to the same thing. Basically means how much light is coming into the sensor on the camera, and because this is computer graphics, we're not really affecting anything else with these settings. We have to do depth of field separately, grain is controlled separately, and all this kind of stuff. So it's just controlling the amount of light. What we can do is this: we can render preview, and eventually everything will refresh. There we go, and you can see we get a little thumbnail in here, and I can now go and mess with this stuff. So let's see what happens if I whack the exposure up to something big like 2000. You can see that okay, 200. You can see that this gets brighter. If I drop that value down to say 1, you can see it goes completely white, and if I change it to say 200, you can see that it starts to go darker. In fact, that's the maximum setting I can reach. There's various presets, physically based outdoor lighting. Let's have that as a clear sky, and that'll give us something sensible at about an exposure value of about 15 EV. Once we've placed our sun and we're reasonably happy with its position, and we've placed our exposure values, we can click render. Oh wait, there's one last thing to say. So placing our sun, you can see that this controls one angle, the rotation. If we want to control the pitch of the sun, then we've got various ways of doing it. We can use date, time, and location. So if we set that up, we can change the time of the sun, like that. So if you have a really low sun angle, let's just rotate that around. Then what would be good for this? I'm going to do that, maybe. I'm going to click render again. Wait for things to catch up. So you can see that previously our sky was blue because it was midday, but now, because all the lighting settings are set up together, when we drop the sun down and change the time of day, it changes all the parameters for the skybox as well, and you can see we get this nice dawn or dusk light effect. Oh, look at that, naughty. So I'm control clicking on the frame here, control left click to zoom in, and right click to zoom out, and you can see there's this little bit of light bleed across there, which I think means I just didn't place my container properly, and it's not quite low enough, and it's letting some bleed go through a very narrow gap between this cart and my crate. So now I've spotted that, let's just fix it. So I'm going to select that and that, into isolation mode. There we go. Pop out again. So now I've got my light set up correctly, I've got everything in place, I've got the time of day right, I've cured my little bits of light bleed, I can render at full res. So to do that I'm going to go back to the render setup dialog up here, I'm going to spin down and we're going to up res here to this. The next thing over here I'm going to go into the render settings and I'm going to just turn this on to unlimited. And what this means is it will continue to render the frame until you're bored and you click stop. You'll see the iterations gradually reduce the amount of grain in the frame, and when you're happy you can just press stop. Alternatively, you can set one of these settings, like say set it to, I don't know, like an hour or half an hour, whatever you want to do depending on how complex the scene is, and you can go away and have some tea. In this case I'm just going to set it to unlimited and I'll just pause the video off and on, then you can see the progression of the frame. So let's try that. So that was my test render earlier. So you can see that initially the frame is black, and I'm just going to pause the video while that caches. So now, like 20 seconds later, this is where we are. You can see there's a lot of grain. If I control click, I'll zoom in, you can see all that grain there. I'll click to zoom out. So let's just pause the video here and I'll go away and have a drink, and then we'll come back in a few minutes. So I think this has been running for about 20 minutes now, and you can see that most of the grain is gone. Let's just zoom in a bit and have a look. So it's still there, you can still see it, but I think that's kind of fine. We're getting down into actual sort of photographic grain. I guess if I want to get rid of it completely, I could probably leave it for maybe like an hour. So depending on the speed of your system, you need to kind of think about leaving quite a lot of time to do these renders if you want them to be super duper clean. But for our purposes, this is fine. And so I'm going to stop the video here, I think.